The US government's debt has swelled nearly 50% since the early days of the COVID pandemic, reaching $34 trillion, about $11 trillion higher than where it stood in March of 2020.
미국 정부 부채가 코로나19 유행 초기부터 지금까지 거의 50% 가까이 증가해 2020년 3월보다 약 11조 달러가 늘어난 34조 5천억 달러. 우리 돈으로 4경 6,007조 원 이상인 것으로 나타났습니다. How many zeros is this? This is an astronomical sum.
Yeah, so a million is a number plus 6 zeros.
Yeah.
A billion is a number plus 9 zeros. So a trillion is a number plus 12 zeros.
Zeros, exactly.
It is $34.5 trillion. This debt is referred to sometimes as the federal IOU. And an IOU is a message you give to someone to say, I owe you this money.
Right.
It's higher than it was in March 2020 by $11 trillion. If you look at it as a portion of the US economy in total, it's more than 120%. It's an amount greater than at any point in the nation's history, according to the CBO. This is a really big deal. The Fed Chair Jerome Powell has said, this is something that elected people, referring to the Senate and the House and the President, need to get their arms around sooner rather than later. This could turn nasty. We had a financial crisis back in 2008, 2009. I think there are some who are concerned we could be heading down another disastrous road if something isn't done.
Exactly. The debt in America, it has swelled is the expression we're looking at here.
Yes. When I think of swell, I think of bellies and balloons.
Yeah.
Because it's growing bigger.
Right.
So if you think of a balloon, blowing up a balloon, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. It swells in size. Or when you eat too many hamburgers, your stomach swells and swells and swells.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's getting larger, similar to soar, for example. But we use soar when we think of a direct line up, whereas with this amount of money, it's like the mass of it is increasing, so it's swelling.
그렇죠. 상처 부위가 이렇게 부풀어 오를 때 그게 swell 했다. The area that I hurt myself, or maybe I got a bruise or something, it swells.
Yes.
Or it swelled.
It's
swollen.
Yeah.
Swollen, normally when we talk about our skin. But in this case, debt has swelled. 부채가 그만큼 늘어났다, 증가했다 이 뜻이고요. Now, if we compare this to the early days of the COVID pandemic, it's actually gotten very big.
Yeah, and we talk about the early days of something. That means at the beginning of something,
Right.
at that first point, that early point in whatever it may have been.
The early days of something, 무언가의 초창기가 되겠습니다. 만약에 나의 초창기 시절 얘기를 하고 싶으면 in my early days 이렇게 말하면 되겠죠. 자, 그럼 다시 한번 헤드라인 읽어보겠습니다. The US government's debt has swelled nearly 50% since the early days of the COVID pandemic, reaching $34 trillion, about $11 trillion higher than where it stood in March of 2020.